Hello. You were meant to do the introduction. Let's start that again. Just rewind 10 seconds.
Welcome to the Off the Tools podcast with me, Andy Jones, and Wayne Bettess. Sorry about that.
He literally looked at me like anyone that's watching this would have seen his face. He was like a deer in headlights there. He was like, oh, yeah, that was me.
What's Wayne doing? Why has he not done the intro?
I literally said it 10 seconds before we started. You do the intro. And he was like, yeah. And then he totally
busy
forgot.
Morning, planning, innit? Busy, lots of planning and shit. So
what's today's title, Mr. Jones?
Today's title, The Breaking Point. When your business starts cracking. Do you know when it is?
We've all been there, haven't we?
Oh, yes. Can you see it coming? Do you know when it's coming? Do you put your head in the sand? Do you hope time will fix things? That's a common one. Just stick with it. See that a lot in the forums. The problem essentially comes when everything hits you at once. So, for example, if your business is propped up by the requirement for a certain number of engineers, it might be 1, it might be 5, whatever that might be. If losing one engineer tips you over a cliff, that's an individual problem that potentially can be dealt with. But if it's multiple things at once, so for example, let's say one of your engineers leave, he might be your best engineer, then your leads have dropped at the same time and cash is tight, that's when you can be in a problem. Me and Wayne have both experienced this in our own heating businesses in the past, and it can cause a lot of problems, especially if you're trying to continuously scale. You need those engineers out there, or you need your own diary full to ensure that works, whether it's customer acquisition or making the right amount of profit. A slight point on that leads dropping. One thing I have noticed a lot of, and the companies are fuckers for taking advantage of this at this time of year, all of the, what would you call them? The subcontracting type lead provider type companies. So think Corgi Home Plan, that pay around 35 quid, fucking horrendous, 35 quid a boiler service. There's a lot of lads, and we've said this before, most guys are very dependent on subcontracting work. There's a big difference between being self-employed and having your own business. Most self-employed lads do bulk of their stuff through subcontracting, whether it's from builders, letting agents, or through these kind of platforms, your home serve, Corgi Home Plan stuff. One guy I saw, they were paying him £35 a service, and he increased his rate to 38, and he lost them all. They took all of them off him. He didn't get a single phone call after that.
No way. Oh my gosh. Your leads
dropping instantaneously, isn't it? And this is the problem, really, when you lean into that subcontracting style of work, that work being provided that's technically not yours. Obviously, we always stress in the group about building, certainly as the core of your business, building it to be individual, private, domestic homeowner customers. So there's lots and lots of pieces, as opposed to building your entire lead generation from, let's say, a couple of builders and a couple of letting agents making up, your entire diary. One of those goes, it's 25%. If you want to keep it even, that goes, and that can be catastrophic overnight. Whereas if you lose one individual private domestic customer, it's just one out of the larger pot. But these kind of scenarios can produce massive gaps in the diary, and then the stress kicks in.
Yeah, then it just...
The trick is obviously to try and stay aware of all these multiple things happening at once. Obviously, it's not usually the individual cogs in the machine. It's when multiple cogs break at once.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And I experienced it a couple of years ago now, didn't I? Where I lost my install team and my office manager all overnight. And, you know, it was multiple things. It was it was I lost the person that quoted, I lost the person that installed, I lost the person that booked in the jobs and dealt with the inquiries. So it was a major like impact, and the cracks certainly obviously grew in that period until I overcome it and solved the problems. But it can be quite scary, can't it, when things start to unravel a little bit?
Yeah, because again, when it's multiple things. So, for example, if your business, let's say it needs either it needs 3 engineers to sustain it, but you've got 5. If you lose one, then it's not a big problem. Yes, your profit will drop, but the turnover is still safe, and the business is still stable. Then you can hire then on a more relaxed basis as opposed to panic hiring. Another scenario there is obviously if you're used to like the the corgi delivering that work to someone, if you drop something like that, then you start panicking and saying yes to everything and anything. Then the next thing you know, you're fitting outside taps and doing unblocking drains and anything just to cover your ass. You then get stuck in that problem then. But essentially, it's when all of these things kicking at once, because then you're fighting to pay the bills, you're picking up work that you probably shouldn't be doing just to fill those gaps in the diaries. And that then obviously, you know, we spoke a lot on here about being selective of what you say yes to so that you ensure continued business growth. You know, if you're a gas lad and you're saying yes to unblocking toilets just to pay bills, they're not going to give you the future work that you want. But again, this will have come from a culmination of things. So as I say, if you've got 5 engineers, but you only need 3 and you lose one, then it's not a big problem. But if you have 3 engineers and you need 3 and you lose one, then it is a big problem. So it's trying to see that ahead. If you only need 3 and you've got 5 and you lose one, but you don't do anything about it, and then you lose another one, you don't do anything about it, that's it not happening overnight. That's a progressive thing, and you haven't taken enough action to mitigate those risks.
Yeah, and a lot of people start to then like panic, don't they? And they'll like hire someone that maybe wasn't suited to the business, which then compounds the problem because it just creates more fuel for the fire, doesn't it? And they like lower their pricing to try and combat the lead sourcing if that's one of the problems, and they just start pulling on a thread of negativity, don't they? And then they make bad decisions, which then leads to more stress, which then means that they're not on top of all of the day-to-day stuff like the accounts and what's being bought, and it quickly snowballs. We've seen it personally and with clients that we've worked with over the years. You know, something that starts off as a small blow, when it accumulates and other blows start to come in, it can quickly sort of ruin 10 years of hard work, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Which again is, you know, software plays its part in all of this as well, because you can't predict where your business is going without having some software in place that can see things. So even something as basic nowadays, in my opinion, as having a job management software can tell you where you've been at for the last few years. If you know, once you've got it in place, you can then see, well, actually, you know, are we making more than we was last year, which, you know, everyone should always do. And you can track these kind of metrics. If you don't have that in place, then you can't see the numbers.
No.
And obviously then you've got nothing to base on, you know, wing and a prayer then, really, isn't it? So but yeah, so to get sort of to based on more solution kind of things, it's obviously making sure you know the difference between having a strong business and a fragile business, because again, a topic that might be a little bit triggering for some people, to use that and that example again, because I think it was such a good example. doing all of your work for, you know, a builder and some letting agents, some, you know, Corgi home plan type stuff is a weak business. It's barely a business, a weak business. And this will piss a lot of guys off. Again, it's not said it just to be a dick. It said it to make you aware of, you need
to highlight it,
make sure it isn't a weak business, because that's such a fucking good example, that isn't it? Like he lost overnight. I think he was getting 50 jobs a month from them.
Yeah, that's a hell of a lot of work and cash and everything, isn't it?
Yeah. Letting agents are always a big risk in the similar scenario. And again, it's different. There is lads in the alliance that leverage the use of letting agents to suit their business. For example, they might have, you know, a spur engineer, or they've got an engineer and it works for them, but the baseline of the business is not that. But this is more really for the sole trader guys who are doing a shit ton of work for letting agents. If someone turns up at the letting agent's door and knocks on the door and says, I'll undercut him by £5 a month, they'll be on it.
Yeah.
Or if you try and conversely, if you try and lift your prices by £5 a month, they will actively try and find someone else. Unfortunately, for most letting agents, there's always going to be some exceptions to the rule, but for most letting agents, price is always going to be the biggest driver over a quality of work, because there's a disconnect for them. But yeah, if you don't put these sort of things in place, you're arguably you've got a fragile business. And in my opinion,
100%.
There's a lot of ways to stop yourself from having a fragile business. Recurring revenue is one that's probably not looked at enough from lads. It's such a massive thing within the alliance to build that, whether it's heating service plans or maintenance plans of your, you know, let's say you do carpet cleaning or you do landscape gardening, you can put maintenance plans in place. There's always an option for that. That creates a strong foundation for the business as well. Having a cash buffer,
huge one.
Guys don't have that, yeah, because having a cash buffer, and again, I can talk about this from experience. When you don't have a cash buffer, it strips away your options. If you have a cash buffer, let's say, again, use that example, you lose one of your lead or work generating sources, but you have a cash buffer. You can say, right, okay, well, I'm going to then put some money into some lead generation or some marketing and fix that gap that you know, losing that lead generation has created in the business.
Yeah. You know, having funds available it doesn't even have to be like mega money, but it just buys you time and clarity to make better decisions. Because when, like we said, when you're getting these multiple blows, if cash then becomes an issue, then that becomes, you know, an analogy here I'd say is like a boxer. If a boxer can knock people out but it can't take the punches, you know, they're not going to get very far in life, are they? You know, they might make a few progresses by getting that lucky punch, but if they can't absorb those hits as they come, they're not going to be in the ring fighting. And cash flow, you know, is one of the major lifebloods of a business. So having some level of, like, I call it a burn rate in the business, having some level of burn in the business, so that if these hits start to come from multiple directions, you can absorb them and not make because it's the rash decisions, not necessarily the blows that kill people and take their businesses down. You know, it's making the silly decisions based on that then seems to compound very, very quickly. And you know, when you're being reactive to problems, you know, within the business, it causes chaos, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's it. And I think that having that buffer, that cash buffer in the bank, just, yeah, again, I can speak about this absolutely from first hand. If you end up in a problem situation and you don't have a cash buffer, for me, it basically stripped away all my options within the business, because a lot of the time the solution to these problems is to push through and go aggressive and go forward. So in my situation, I needed another van, I needed another engineer or another 2 engineers, and the solution was to push forward and do that. But without having some capital reserves, you know, you're not able to do that. So that's like, it's about building out these contingencies, and it's not just a singular thing. It's a cash buffer. It's what we said about the work scenario. Don't put all your eggs in one basket when it comes to you know, the work providing, whether it's the builders, the letting, etc. Because you know, I spoke to a lad last year who is the entirety of his diary was from a single builder. That's all he did. All of his work was from one builder. I was like, well, what happens if the builder goes bust? Or he goes, I'm done, like, and I'm moving to fucking Australia, like. And he's like, oh, I never really thought about it. Like, maybe you should. But again, if he's not got a cash buffer and that builder up sticks, then he's goosed, and then he's hunting for a job quickly. So it's the cash buffer is as important as any of the other things, but it's those individual points that need to always be addressed, and it's something that we obviously attack heavily and off the tools when it comes to things like planning, even just basic stuff like planning for your VAT and your tax bills. If you've not planned for them, then it catches up with you, and when that bill lands and you're like, shit.
And that brings me on to a good example. You know, over the years, there's been times where I've taken these hits, right? And over the years, I've learned how to manage cash better. So like a good example was a few years back, we had lost an engineer, leads were fairly quiet, and we had a big tax bill, VAT bill that had come in from the winter period. So I think, I can't remember exactly, but it was like 15 grand or something around that, the VAT. So it was quite a big one. And I was like looking at the work, the quoting that was going out, looking at the team that we had available, looking at the cash. And I was like, oh, what do I do here? Like the VAT bill's being chased and needs to be paid. So I decided to put the VAT on a payment plan, right, over 12 months. So what that gave me then is funds in the business so that I could ride out that little month or two where we had lost the engineer, we didn't have as many leads coming in. So it let me, that was learned the hard way from before, where I'd pay everything and then have no cash in the business and be like, oh, now I'm stuck. Now I can't put more money into marketing or hire that person because I can't get the van because I've got no cash available. So being sensible with that is very, very important. And don't be scared to leverage some of these sort of cash flow management things. Like you can put, if you've got a high bill in your merchant account, the merchant wants their money, but ultimately they want to earn more money off you in the future. So you can normally negotiate, you know, little payment plans that just buy you a little bit of a window just to get back on top of it. So don't be scared to do that. And that goes with work as well. If you've got good systems in the business, I can in less than 20 seconds, I can see all of the servicing work that we've got for the rest of the year. So again, similar to the money management, you know, if I'm looking a bit quiet and the workload's not there, I don't have to panic. I can just contact customers from the next couple of months and put a little bit of effort into some marketing to those to bring that work forward. But I can only do that because I've got good systems. You know, I've not used paperwork for 15 years. You know, it's all digital. It's all in CRM systems like SalesLion and ServiceMate. So systems also play a big part in stop being a fragile business and becoming a strong business. You know, there's so many different scenarios that can play out. And another thing, like if you only hire when you need to, then you're chasing your tail, aren't you? So what you should be doing is stockpiling CVs, stockpiling contacts that you can approach as and when you need to. You know, if you do it once the engineer leaves, guess what? You know, you're behind, aren't you? You know, now then you're going to lead to a bad decision, bad hire. So you can offset a lot of these blows that can happen with preparation and planning and having having resources available, whether it be staffing, jobs, money, whatever it might be, you can mitigate a lot of it by proper planning. What is that saying? Proper planning prevents piss poor performance. The 7 Ps or 6 or 7 Ps, whatever that is. I think it's a military statement, isn't it? And
that's
it's so
one,
true.
Yeah. That
prior planning prevents piss poor performance. Yeah. So sorry, any army people, anyone that actually knows what the phrase actually is, in case I've messed it up. I've probably added a P in there somewhere, but who knows?
Yeah, that point that you've just mentioned there, Wayne, is again something that I've experienced firsthand, and that we try and pass that advice on to people, because if your business is dependent on a certain number of engineers, even if it's not, but obviously ultimately if it is, then it's vital. What you don't want to do is lose an engineer, then try and replace them, then lose an engineer and try and replace them, because what will happen is it'll chip away and chip away and chip away at the accounts until you're like, oh shit, I've lost a shit ton of money. Whereas if your business is set up right and your pricing is right, what you'll find is those, especially sort of on an averages basis within the alliance, most lads need 2 engineers out with full diaries to cover all of the costs of the business.
Yeah.
So if you then move on to, you don't want to be sat at those 2 all the time. You might as well move to 3 and then 4, because what you'll find is, because those first 2 engineers are covering the costs of the business, engineers 3 and 4 are really just their own. They need to be self-serving on their own costs, plus obviously the PAYE pension, things like that. But fundamentally, engineers 3 and 4 do not need to generate as much money as engineers 1 and 2. Obviously, you can mathematically spread that across the 4 then. You might need 2 engineers doing 6 jobs a day, but then, 4 engineers doing 5 jobs a day will make you more money. So that there's a little bit less pressure on those next engineers. And to get back to the crux of the chat, it gives you that buffer then. If you always need 2, you should always have at least 3. And you can balance it out by, as you say, either moving a little bit forward, like I've just said, and going to 4, giving yourself 2 engineers in the buffer, or having engineers like we play it. We have engineers on file who want to come and work for us, but the timing's not quite right. We're not ready for another engineer, but they'll sit and wait in a bit of, either with a locked in future start date, or with the just keeping their CV on file, like you suggested. But to culminate the bulk of the conversation about this podcast, really, it's about knowing where the business is at, so you could look ahead, but also B, putting as many crash buffers, if you will, in place. Putting the tires around the track, so that if something goes wrong, you can realign, using a weird motorsport type analogy, but you break traction, you can probably save it if it's just one thing. But then if you break traction and then you land on a bit of oil, and then someone else on the track with you clips you, then there's a lot of things have happened at once, and you could end up being a bit fucked. But obviously, if you put some protection stuff in place, put the tires in place, then you're going to stop it from falling off the cliff and being absolutely disastrous. So but that requires an overshot of the business, really, doesn't it? It needs to be either through being around the right people, whether it be your peers, being surrounded by the right people, or getting some advice, some coaching advice, or just pulling yourself out of the business from time to time to give it an overshot.
Yeah, because a lot of people sort of have these rose tinted glasses, and things are going well, so they think it's always going to go well. But your business, whoever you are listening to this, these problems will surface at some point. Hopefully not all at once. But the question really is are you ready? Are you ready? Are you prepared if someone leaves today? Are you prepared if you lose that big contract that is the lifeblood of your business? If the answer's no, then that's your next task, isn't it? Is to start preparing for that doomsday, so to speak, scenario, so that you can survive and not let it bring you down and not let it take you out ultimately.
That's it, exactly like that.
Yeah.
Any final words on this?
I'd just remember, like, being busy tends to hide problems, you know. So you know, make sure that even if you are busy, that you find time to think about what we spoke about today and look at putting things in place. Ultimately, your business is there to make profit, and profit brings security. If you've got money and you've got a healthy, profitable business, then you can ride many storms, can't you? So make sure that that ultimately that you're profitable. And remember, when pressure is applied, it exposes the truth of who you are and what your business is. So if you highlight things that are in the business when you're under pressure, they need to be fixed. So the next round of pressure that comes along, you can have more security and more choices to make better decisions. Yeah, I think that's about it from me. Anything else you wanted to say about on today's session?
You've got it there. Yeah, try and be aware of what's actually happening in your business. Really, if you've just created a job by working for these companies like I mentioned before, then you haven't really got a business that you can protect yourself with. If you're only working for a couple of different like facilities providers or whatever it might be, and one of them goes, they're volatile at best. The Corgi home plan is the best example I can think of, which was on the forum literally a week ago. 50 jobs a month gone overnight because he increased his price by £3. So yeah, be careful of what you generate your work from, or where you generate your work from, should I say.
Yeah, definitely. On that note, we will love you and leave you. And we have got a webinar coming up, which is a live Q&A. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's June the 16th, which is a Tuesday night at 7 p.m. It's open to anybody, whether you're in business or thinking of starting a business. Come along. Try and make sure you bring some questions, because we're not coming to the table with anything to talk about other than what you guys ask me and Andy live on the webinar. I'll put the link in the description to this so you can register. So it's June the 16th, 7 p.m. Normally last about 45 minutes to an hour and a half ish sort of time. Obviously you can come and go. You're not on camera. You can post your questions anonymously. So if you are feeling a bit conscious, you can still get your questions discussed. Hopefully we'll see you on that soon. All right.
Let's go,
guys.